kind of add to Nancy's comment, is in the LA Times about 3 weeks ago, a new project called Sola Village. Interesting. It's like south of LA Village. It's a $1 billion private investment that's going to be a block from LA Trade Tech College, a community college that serves 15,000 students, historically speaking, mostly people of color, mostly poor. 1 block away and 2 blocks away from the Lorenzo housing development. So the area, and it's along Washington Boulevard, which is a transit-oriented development corridor. So the way they're promoting it, this side of the freeway in this district, is come to South LA because downtown is already full. And we know that land is cheaper down here. So if you want to build and develop, just cross the freeway and come south. We're still not in the hood, the way they're displaying it, and they're saying it's an opportunity to reinvent this area for the new folks coming in. So these are the dynamics that we're dealing with. And so for us as UNIDAD, our whole idea, we've been involved for a long time. It's been a coalition that's kind of evolved, going back all the ways to the days of the Staples Center development, and even prior to issues with USC and other projects. It's been a historical evolution. But a couple of years ago, we started to think about, well, how do you get ahead of the curve? Understand that all this is going to continue to happen, and understand how speculators think and how real estate works. That this area is so vulnerable and lacks so much political power by its residents' core, that we need to get together and figure out how do we flip this in a way that creates opportunity for people to actually stay here, as opposed to continue the wave of displacement. So we looked at kind of, community wealth building strategies, looking at anchor institutions. Understand that you need capital to be invested and policy to be created that targets this area or targets any sort of low-income community of people of color. Understanding what is happening across the country in urban cores. We felt that we had to figure out how to organize, not only fight projects from a position of strength to say we want to be at the table, but develop demands that would then create community benefits for local and areas that are also lacking certain resources and opportunities to plug in. And then how do we implement these victories? Because we knew we could win. I mean, it's a big fight, but we knew we could win. We always talk about the fact that the fight is sometimes, sadly to say, is the easy part, because we know how to fight. The hard part is how do we implement the benefits we win, and more importantly, how do we use these benefits as transformative opportunities for an entire area? Not driven just by the projects, but driven by community vision. So that's kind of been the overarching understanding of UNIDAD's work for the last couple of years. And so we focused on 2 projects, and now the third one is, as a result of our lessons learned, we focused on the Lorenzo Housing Project as a community benefit agreement, and then at the USC Village Project expansion, 5 million square feet of revitalization of that area for USC students. And now the third piece is, we learned that it's hard to take on one project at a time. Why don't we look at the community plans that actually provide the framework and the land use for these projects to then take place, because we know more are coming, like the Sola Village that I just mentioned earlier. So that was the focus in terms of a strategy. And we wanted to, of course, build power. We wanted to, of course, be seen as partners. We wanted to also, of course, have the outcome be that we lose less and less families from this area. We've already seen waves of that happen. So understanding how to use anchor institutions as a project for community revitalization was critical. So we knew that these 2 projects were important for that. The Lorenzo Housing Project represented $250 million of private investment on land that was purchased privately. However, it had a zoning condition that said it had to be used for a medical facility or an education campus. And then a $1.1 billion project, which is USC. So South LA has never seen that type of financial investment, private capital, in many, many years. And with cities being bankrupt, as many cities are, or broke, politicians always are like, yes, bring in the jobs, bring in the transformation, bring in the physical, nice-looking things, because they can use it for their thing. And without powerful voice at the table, it was very challenging. So the idea of looking at a strategy that was going to not only look at these from economic development opportunities, but from more robust. So what's the relationship between health, economic development, housing, open space, new walkability and landscaping of an area? What was that relationship? How do we also involve the small business community in this piece? How to create entrepreneurship opportunities for nonprofits? That was all part of how we envisioned going after the lands around this project. And the other thing is, we talked a lot about resident engagement. And so residents were involved. So we believe, we also, part of the strategy, we need to build resident power for the long haul. Organizations may come and go, but residents, as you can hear, have been here a long time, and it's up to them to really make sure that these victories, these policy victories, are implemented and carried out for the long haul. So residents were involved in identifying the conditions and envisioning the neighborhood they wanted to see and developing demand for both specific projects. They were involved in the negotiation sessions. And I want to say really quickly, at one point we were so humiliated by the process. We, as organizational leaders, like the anguish we felt in one of the meetings where they really like talked down to us, the attorneys and the rental housing project. And I remember us wanting to walk away from the negotiation table, and the resident said, "Oh no, you ain't going anywhere. Sorry you feel bad, get in there and fight. You have to, this is more important for the community than your own personal feelings." I remember that. So residents in this coalition have been very involved in identifying this, and also the leadership is really robust. So if you talk to the different folks here, we believe in the pipeline process. So that means that we know that people need a lot of support and capacity building over different areas. So we have promotoras de salud who've taken community planning classes. We've also now been part of the People's Planning School at SAGE. We've been public allies, or part of the CD9 coalition. I mean, all these folks are part of church-based movements. They're all participated in different activities, but agree to come together under the banner of UNIDAD because they understand the long-term piece of that. I think the other couple of things to identify is we also believe in the concept of strategy about leveraging. So how do we leverage the BAC, South LA piece into this? So the UNIDAD coalition is part of our community work groups 4 and 8. And so there was our information sharing and gathering of ideas with those partners to make sure that the strategies we developed were sound, but also supported by other portions of South LA. Because the majority of this fight is in the northern portion of South LA, and the BHC side goes further than that. We want to make sure that there's understanding and there's a relationship. So that was really big for us too, as well as in the long-term work of the area. The endowment is part of a council. The idea is to be part of a planning council for the USC implementation work. So how do we leverage the investments that you're already making and the potential relationships with other foundations to look at this from a broader perspective has been key. The other key thing I think is communications. So we understood that the narrative of South LA is not one that we want to promote from a negative and a deficiency perspective. So the narrative was about opportunity, hope, equity, no more displacement, how many years people have been here. So our communication strategy was really good because it made, for example, USC look like a big bully. Like, as much as they were talking about creating jobs and opportunities, at the end of the day, the way we were able to use the media strategy around, this is an anti-displacement, where it's not fair to move out people. Why not build the capacity of people who are currently here to make a strong neighborhood around USC that supports USC's goals and opportunities? The other narrative we pushed a lot was, why can't USC be one of the key institutions in the country that is able to transform a community without displacing that community? So those kind of narratives and those communication strategies were critical in terms of our work because it got us a lot of attention, and a lot of people started to question USC's strategies and their relationship to the community as a result. So communication was key. And then research, I think, was a critical component because we found out through this process that the city doesn't do a lot of its own research. They expect you to give them information so that they can understand your fight better. So we were able to do research across the country, universities that are dealing with this kind of work, and we were able to use that to kind of shame USC into saying, well, how could you only provide housing for 30% of your student population? And the important thing with the research and the narrative was USC and other developers were going to argue that they don't contribute to displacement. You can't see a direct connection between what I do and people choosing to leave the neighborhood. Well, with the USC research and the university research that we found, we're able to show over the last 25 years how their students were competing with families for housing because USC failed to build enough student housing for their own students and even affordable housing for their students. So you have poor students competing with poor families for housing, and it created an environment of a lot of legal discrimination happening where homeowners saying, oh, we only rent to students, that's illegal. But people are thinking, because of the lack of information. So communications, the comprehensive strategic look at how do we connect all these projects and these resources to make a better South LA community where residents are driving, they're thinking around it, the leveraging, resident leadership, and then looking at these anchor institutions, not as the savior to these communities, but as an opportunity to create partnerships and really bring the resources and economic opportunity that helps create good health in the area and stability. So I think for us, strategically, those are the key pieces that I wanted to identify. And then just to say that specifically, like you said, where were your dollars going for this process? Your funding of the core groups in this process is critical. Without that investment, we would have a hard time keeping the process going. Communication grant, you were able to help us with the direct grant on communications, because when you're taking on USC, the biggest communications institution in this area, we had one consulting group that helped us, and we were going up against 8 different Fenton, yes. And we were going up against USC. Started out with one communications group. By the time they were done, they were up to 8 people. So they had 8 different groups competing with us, a small, coalition, because of the investment that you guys helped us with, in terms of leveraging, framing, and making the story pop out. I already talked about the ongoing partnership around the Economic Council, where the endowment actually has a seat at the table there to help us think through how do we take the USC project, but then look at a broader perspective in the South LA area, and how do we leverage economic opportunities with the WIBs, the city, the county, and other investments that are happening in the area. You have become our fiscal manager for the benefits, the financial benefits that were generated in Lorenzo, which was great because it allows us to have an issue of transparency, where the program oversight committee, which is now you have residents having control over decisions that are made about how investments roll out to the community, was super important. Without you being that fiscal agent for that process, we would not have been able to have.
Who's you?
You is California Endowment.
TCE.
TCE, yeah. So all the money that was generated from the community benefits agreement with Lorenzo, $4 million, is then was deposited then at the endowment, and then as the POC says, okay, this money is approved for this project, we've got an evaluation, we're ready to roll, then you guys cut the check for that. So that's a critical piece. It's an important piece. And we would not be able to have, I think, the issue of, as a coalition, have the issue of transparency without that process. Because then it would have seemed like, oh, you guys are it's just a money grab. See what I'm saying? And the program oversight committee also gives the residents power to control that distribution. So that's critical. Without the health impact assessment that you guys funded at USC, which allowed us to make the argument that what is happening with the master plan is going to impact the health and well-being of residents in this area, that provided us with the kind of quantitative and qualitative data that we're so used to telling the story, but them listening is different. But you can't argue with that kind of factual evidence that you guys supported and funded. And then I think the last piece, I think, is the ongoing support of all our leadership development programs, whether it's the Los Angeles Community Organizing Academy, whether it's the Promotoras of Salud, whether it's the People's Planning School, whether it's Trust Out LA's ongoing leadership development work. I mean, without that investment, we could not build the pipeline of residents that you have here today. So to me, I think the way we look at it is, not only are you helping us in terms of helping us with this overall movement as a community, but you're making direct contributions to support the strategies that without that support would be very, very difficult for us to stand alone. And I think the endowment supporting from UNIDAD, while it might have put you guys in an uncomfortable situation with USC, also gave us a lot of credibility, because the endowment would not be supporting groups that do not have the well-being of the community at their heart and a long-term standing in the community, right? So I think that was helpful for USC to know that as much as they called it these national organizations who were just jumping around from CB to CB, by the time they started dealing with us, they knew that we were part of a legitimate process.